where does my story begin? Um, well, I grew up in a small town in Indiana and was a classic introvert, shy girl, horse girl. I was definitely in my own little world for most of my childhood and could often be found playing in my room. I was obsessed with media, pop culture. I really like to create things from the things that I already liked, which I still see in my life today. I would record my favorite TV shows, Dawson's Creek, Friends, Starman and Greg, Ally McBeal, Buffy, and I would tape them off of their original television airing onto, yes, VHS tapes. And then I had a double-decker VHS set up in my bedroom, and then I would spend hours then going through the episodes that I taped and cutting out the commercials and create kind of my own little hodgepodge box set. I, for the most part, didn't have it organized enough that I was doing one show per tape, but like that week or that like month of shows that I taped would then get edited down to another VHS tape that I could then watch over and over and over again, and I did. I've only recently, in the past couple years, discovered that I am on the autism spectrum, and one of the qualities that really resonated for me as I was making this discovery was the idea that the reason that female autistic individuals are not diagnosed as often as children is because our special interests, which is one of the big key indicators of autism, tend to blend in with normal neurotypical interests. So, for instance, I was obsessed with magazines and beauty and celebrity culture, and I had stacks and stacks and stacks of magazines. And when I got too many magazines, they were overflowing from my closet. I then, very much like with the VHS tapes, went through every single magazine and any article that I thought I'd ever want to look at again. I almost had like a photographic memory of these magazines. Like I knew exactly like two-thirds of the way through the magazine that there was an interview with Britney Spears or that there was a nail polish color that Buffy wore on the second season. And I would tear out the important parts as I deemed them. And some of them I would put really organized. So the celebrities that I was particularly interested in, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Katie Holmes, Claire Danes, they would all get their own little page protectors and binders. And then anything that was just kind of like tertiary, like beauty tips or something like that, that struck my fancy, or sometimes it was just the page looked really good. I liked the layout of the aesthetics of the page. I would tear that out. And then those would kind of get their own little flat folder that they would just be shoved in there. They wouldn't be quite as organized. But I kept that for years. And I think up until a couple years ago, my parents still had a few of those at home. I think they finally got thrown out. I was particularly obsessed with the People magazines, The Most Beautiful People, but it definitely transformed a lot over the years. Back in the 90s, when I was originally collecting those issues, there was a lot about the celebrities' weight and their heights and like a lot of physical features. Whereas nowadays they've kind of drifted away from that. They focus more on other qualities that are, can be more universally beautiful. And I had a folder dedicated to that issue in particular. And I still to this day know that I'm influenced by those things that I read about celebrity culture. Like I currently still wear perfume with vanilla scent in it because I read that Sarah Michelle Gellar used to wear vanilla scented lotion or perfume back when she was on Buffy. And it's very intriguing now as a 40-year-old to be so out of touch with the current celebrity culture, and it's almost a freeing thing. I think when I was younger and I was obsessed with all of these celebrities and I knew every little fact right about them, I remember thinking anyone who wasn't involved in that media frenzy I didn't understand, but it was because I was so deeply looking for ways to model myself as an individual in the world, not just as like a preteen and a teenager that was trying to find my identity, but as someone who was neurospicy. And at the time, I didn't know this, but now looking back on it, I realized that I just wasn't quite sure how to be quote unquote normal. And I think I was just obsessively studying the best qualities that I could find. And obviously, we had so much more information available to us for celebrities. And so, if I wanted to know like how individuals act in their day to day life, or if I wanted to know just like a way of being in the world that wasn't kind of in opposition with what traditional culture was expecting, that was how I figured it out. That was how I found a way to pass or to mask, honestly, is what it is. My mask was developed by all of these little tidbits of celebrities. I don't think it was a bad thing. Yes, there's different things in learning about my autism and learning about masking that I've had to kind of deconstruct and maybe do a little less of. But that aspect of it, I actually think was really beneficial. The study of individuals, it still serves me to this day to kind of observe the world around me and to be able to pick the human qualities out of the actions of individuals, whether they be in pop culture or in day-to-day life. And I think it actually gives me a deeper sense of empathy and connection to humanity because I see the outside world, the good and the bad, as just human. I feel like a lot of people that are discovering that they're not neurotypical kind of resonate with this sort of like alien feeling of like almost like this Spock like creature that's observing humankind. And I think that if you can have a really open heart about it, it gives you a greater sense of unconditional love because you realize that all of the qualities are human and you see patterns as a neurodivergent person, and so you see the patterns of like even the worst person you could think of on this planet is exhibiting patterns in their behavior and their emotional life and their trauma history that we all can resonate with. And that's not always the most popular opinion, to find empathy for people that are not doing the best things in the world. But I think that my personal mission for myself in life is to always be able to find a sense of empathy no matter what is going on and to be able to see things from both sides. And I think that that's honestly the path towards greater peace if we can all have a little more empathy for someone else's circumstance. What was the question again? Where did I originate? So yeah, that was my origin story. Growing up in a small town in Indiana, originally I wanted to be an actress. And I think this comes from that both pop culture obsession and also the study of human beings and individuals. And so I was always mimicking and picking up on other people's behaviors just to kind of mask and pass as normal. And so it became a natural follow up to that to be able to enjoy mimicking characters and developing qualities and tendencies and behavioral patterns for them. And I still find that fascinating. I just kind of let go of my desire to be a performer when I became more at peace with myself. I think for a long time, the desire to act was that I wanted someone to tell me what to say and tell me what to do because it was going to be much less effort for me to try and appear a certain way if I had a script and if I had direction. And the more that I developed a sense of self love and self acceptance, the less that calls to me. It's still fun, but I think that much like you hear a lot of celebrities saying, you kind of go through a period that you think that you're gonna become successful in that arena and it's going to create a sense of being known and being accepted by the outside world. And I think I reached a certain age, probably about 5, 6, maybe even 10 years ago, that I was like, oh, that's not the answer. And when it stopped being an answer to some sort of emotional void, there was less of a drive. Now I kind of have just the desire to work on projects that are really creatively stimulating. So I really tend to lean towards working with creative friends and my own projects if I am going to perform or act or get into that arena, because I just don't have the desire to do projects that aren't stimulating to me just for the fact of building a career and being seen by the world and being accepted, because there are other ways to do that that feel more authentic to me. So how did I get started in all of this? So I am a spiritual advisor is a very old school way of saying it, but I'm kind of reclaiming that terminology because I read tarot and I read the Akasha records, which is a very complex thing to explain. But for me, a lot of times it's reading people's past lives is how that shows up. And then I also am a Reiki healer and a Reiki teacher. And I have found that if I say that I'm a tarot reader, to try and sum up what I do, because the conversation is different with everyone, it doesn't compass what I am or what I'm trying to do in the world. I think that there are many, many, many tarot readers these days that are leaning into the direction of what I like to do and why I like to call it an intuitive coach or a spiritual advisor, because leaning less away from fortune telling and like giving just insights on someone else that you're for some reason not having a conversation with and you want to kind of like psychically understand what they're thinking or a situation, and going into a place of internal reflection. And so that's how I like to use these modalities. It's not so much about predicting the future, because anyone who's really studied energy knows that it's a lot harder to predict the future these days. There's a big energy shift that happened in 2012. It's when we thought it was going to be the end of the world because it's the end of the Maya calendar. And essentially what it was is it was the end of the world as we knew it. It was the end of the energy being less malleable. And so my opinion is that pre-2012, you could go to a fortune teller of any kind, and they could tell you a fortune, and it would be much more likely to come true because the energy wasn't as malleable. And now we have so much power in our own destiny and our own path. And we did before as well, but so many people are waking up to their abilities to kind of manipulate their energy in the world around them that you could go to a tarot reader and get a completely accurate prediction from them of your future. And you can make one little decision the next day that completely altered that path because you chose to. And your free will is so powerful and the energy is so easily manipulated these days. And so it's not so much about telling someone what's going to happen. It's about showing them a potential future based on their current energy and helping them figure out, is that a path that they want to go down? And if so, how can we maintain the energy at play? Or is there another way that they would like to go? And how can we start to reverse engineer that? Look at where you want to be, how it contrasts to what the future currently holds, and how can you take day-to-day steps and your rituals, your intentions, and your own energy awareness to be able to alter that future, because you totally can. And so I resist calling myself a tarot reader, and I even resist doing a lot of readings online these days because there is so much of an audience that gravitates towards it that are just looking for someone to tell them what the lover that they're not talking to is thinking or what they're going to do, or tell them what their future is going to be. And I get it. It's reassuring to feel like you know what's coming or what's going to happen. But I would much rather take the person who wants me to tell them what their crush is thinking and say, well, what can we do to strengthen your own confidence that you go to that crush and you ask them what they're thinking and you communicate with the actual human being that you're wanting to connect with. That's my intention. So again, spiritual advisor, intuitive coach is really what I like to call myself. And then beyond that, I like to teach people how to tap more into that side of themselves so they don't feel the need to rely on a reader. So my favorite way to do this, the way that I personally found a huge up level in my own intuition, is through Reiki training. So Reiki is a Japanese healing art. It is non-denominational. It doesn't have any sort of spiritual background, and that the creator actually intended that to be that way so that no matter what your spiritual beliefs, you could still be a Reiki healer. You could still believe in the power of Reiki. And it's both distance and hands-on. And so level 1, you learn how to do hands-on healing for yourself and your friend family. Level 2, you become professionally certified, and then you also learn how to do distance healing. And distance healing is both like me sending you Reiki across the room, or me sending you Reiki as an audience out into the world, or it also can be me sending Reiki to my childhood self, or me sending Reiki to my future self that has a nerve-wracking meeting or something that I feel like I need a little extra smoothing over for. And that is, I mean, it's a superpower. I think it's the coolest thing in the world. And it's so funny because I actually went into my Reiki training as a pretty big skeptic. Like I mean, now these days I'll talk about how the trees are protecting us and they have their own personalities. But back when I went into my Reiki training, I was just starting my career as a yoga instructor at the time. So we did have an element of like spiritual awareness. I was meditating, but as a whole, I'd always been intrigued by, like, magic and more ethereal stuff, but there was always that part of my brain that's like, "But that's not real." Like, that's just something that exists in fairy tales and in movies. And then there was a huge shift that happened when I went into my level 1 training. I like to explain it in my trainings as a Reiki heal is just a straw for healing energy. It's just the ability to let energy flow through you from wherever in the universe cosmos that you want to believe that healing's coming from. Again, it's non-denominational, so whatever it is that you want to think the all-encompassing energy of love and healing comes from, that's what you're just sucking down from the universe and letting it go into another individual. And so I always explain the 21-day cleanse as we as human beings going about in our day-to-day lives and accumulating the baggage that we do, we start our Reiki training as a straw that's had a lot of smoothies and not really been properly cleaned. So, you know, that gunk that gets stuck in a straw if you're drinking a lot of like thicker drinks. That's kind of what the channel, the chakra energy centers are like whenever you go into a Reiki training. And through the process of this 21-day cleanse, it's like taking one of those nifty little straw brushes and cleaning things out so that not only do you feel better, but you're a clearer channel for what you're channeling into an individual, be it yourself or someone else. And it's hard to wrap your mind around. Like, it's like, okay, you're not giving me a Reiki session for 21 days. The energy is just, it's automatic. And I get it. It's hard to understand until you experience it. But it definitely, it changed my world. I became a much more peaceful, more confident, more aligned with myself version. And I love it so much that I actually give myself level 1 attunements just to have a 21-day cleanse happen periodically throughout the year. And it's a way that I just kind of keep in touch with my energy and keep my straw clear for both myself and for those around me, my clients, my students. My students have just echoed what I experience. It's a really great process to become very self-reflective and very aware of the things that are coming up because through the process of going through a 21-day cleanse, you learn a lot about the chakras that are being cleansed. And each one kind of correlates with different aspects of your life. So the energy goes into each chakra and stays there for 3 days at a time, starting at the root and going to the crown. And so what's happening for those 3 days are kind of reflecting how you feel about those areas of your life. And some of them are more intense than others, depending on what you've got going on there, but it just shows you how you compartmentalize things in your life and how you can better find balance between all those areas.